When I was in college, I'd always drive home for the holidays. I went to school pretty far away, so I'd usually split the trip up and spend the night somewhere along the way. Since it was just a place to rest before hitting the road again, I wasn't very picky. I'd pick whatever I could find along my route that was the cheapest. This time it was a random house not too far off the highway. I arrived pretty late at night. The host had left the key under the mat. I let myself in and immediately felt that uneasy feeling you get when you're in an unfamiliar place. I explored the house a bit, found the essentials, and decided to hit the sack. The bedroom had this old four-poster bed, and I was so tired from the long drive that I just crashed without giving it much thought. I woke up in the middle of the night because I heard something. At first, I thought it was just the house making those normal sounds old houses tend to make. But then I heard it again, footsteps, clear as day. I lay there for a moment, frozen. Maybe it's just the host. But as the footsteps got closer, I knew something was off. They weren't the steady steps of someone familiar with the place. They were hesitant, fumbling. My heart was beating out my chest. I strained my ears, trying to make out more details. It was like someone was shuffling around, opening and closing doors. The sound was coming from downstairs. Now, I'm not one to jump to conclusions, but panic started to set in. I didn't have any weapons or anything, just my phone. I grabbed it quietly and tiptoed to the bedroom door. The house was pitch dark. I made my way to the staircase, each step creaking under my weight. It felt like an eternity. The sounds downstairs were getting louder. It was like whoever was down there knew I was awake, and they were making more noise intentionally. I peeked over the railing, and that's when I saw it. A shadowy figure, just a silhouette against the dim moonlight coming through the windows. They were rifling through drawers in the living room, unaware that I was watching. My mind was racing. What should I do? I couldn't confront this person. I needed to get out. I retreated back into the bedroom, locked the door, and dialed the police. The dispatcher told me to stay put and wait for help. I could hear the intruder now, moving up the stairs. They were right outside the bedroom door. I held my breath, praying they wouldn't try to break in. I'm on the line with the police, whispering the details as quietly as I can. The dispatcher reassures me that help is on the way, but every second feels like an eternity. I can feel the weight of someone on the other side of that door listening. Then, without warning, they start jiggling the doorknob. Panic sets in. My hands are shaking as I press myself against the wall, as if that'll make me invisible. The dispatcher on the phone urges me to stay calm, but how can anyone be calm in a situation like this? The intruder starts pounding on the door, demanding that I let them in. Their voice is low, almost guttural, and it sends chills down my spine. With each thud on the door, I realize I can't wait for the police to arrive. I need to get out of here, now. I glance around the room, desperate for an escape route. That's when I spot it. A window, barely big enough to squeeze through. It's my only way out. I grab my phone and silently unlock the window, praying it doesn't squeak. The pounding on the door continues, growing more aggressive. I take a deep breath and hoist myself through the window, trying not to make a sound. I hit the ground outside, gravel digging into my palms. The adrenaline is pumping, and I don't look back. I sprint through the darkness, not daring to check if the intruder saw me escape. I round the corner of the house, and as I glance back, I see a shadowy figure emerging from the front door. I don't stop running until I reach the main road, where I see the lights of the police in the distance. They pick me up, and together we head back to the house. When we arrive, there is no one there. To this day, I don't know who the intruder was and what they would have done to me if they got me. A few years ago, I had to go on a business trip, one of those last-minute things that came up. I booked a place on Airbnb to save some cash since my company is not exactly rolling in money. The place looked decent in the pictures, and the reviews were mostly positive. It was a small town, not much around, but it was close to where my meetings were, so it seemed perfect. I arrived in the evening, and the host had left the key in one of those lockbox thingies. The house was old, but not in a charming way. It was just plain creepy. I brushed it off. I wasn't planning on spending much time there anyway. As I unpacked in, I started feeling this weird vibe, like someone was watching me. I chalked it up to being in a strange place, turned on all the lights, and distracted myself with work. The next day was when things got bizarre. I went out for my meetings and came back in the evening. As I walked into the Airbnb, I noticed something off. It was subtle, but the furniture seemed slightly rearranged. I thought maybe the cleaning person had been by, but it just felt wrong. That night, I decided to watch some TV to unwind. That's when I saw it, a tiny red light blinking on the TV stand. I got up to get a closer look, and there it was, this small camera just staring at me. I couldn't believe it. I started looking around, and sure enough, I found more hidden in the smoke detector, disguised as a thermostat. I freaked out. I immediately unplugged everything, not knowing if they were still watching. Who would do something like this? I felt violated. And the worst part? I couldn't just leave. I had to stay for the business meetings. And besides, I couldn't afford to rent a hotel room just like that. The next morning after I left for my meetings, everything seemed fine. But that's when the nightmare truly began. I started getting strange messages on my phone. They included pictures of me inside the Airbnb. How could someone have those pictures? I was alone, or at least I thought I was. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. I started checking every inch of the Airbnb for more cameras, and sure enough, I found another one. This time in the bedroom. It was hidden inside a picture frame. I smashed it. I was so angry, but the damage was already done. I decided I had to get out of there. I reported the incident to Airbnb, and they were surprisingly helpful. They refunded me and assured me they would investigate the host. They also recommended I contact the police, which I did, but without solid evidence, there wasn't much they could do. Back at home, I tried to put it all behind me, but that's when things took a darker turn. The strange messages continued, but now they included details about my personal life that I had never shared with anyone. It was like the person behind this knew me better than I knew myself. I started questioning everyone I knew, wondering who could be behind this twisted invasion of my privacy. I changed my locks, updated all my passwords, blocked the numbers texting me, but it didn't stop. If anything, it got worse. I'd be sitting at home and suddenly my phone would buzz with a new message, a picture of me at the grocery store, at work, even at the gym. I couldn't escape the feeling of being constantly observed. I became paranoid, always looking over my shoulder, checking for hidden cameras even in my own home. It got so bad that I started losing sleep, my mind racing with thoughts of who could be doing this and why. One day, as I was going through the pictures and messages for what felt like the 100th time, I noticed a pattern. They were always one step ahead, anticipating my every move. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just a random act of voyeurism. Someone was orchestrating this, pulling the strings from the shadows. Desperation kicked in, and I decided to dig deeper. I combed through every online account, every social media platform, looking for any signs of a breach. And then I found it. A mysterious email in my spam folder, filled with cryptic messages and links that seemed to lead nowhere. I couldn't make much sense of it, but it felt like a breadcrumb trail left by the person tormenting me. I followed the trail, jumping through virtual hoops, and it led me to a dark corner of the internet, a place where anonymity thrived, and people's lives were traded like currency. It was a forum for hackers and information brokers, and there, buried in the virtual chatter, I found a thread discussing my case. It turned out I wasn't the only victim. Others had experienced the same level of intrusion into their lives. The common thread was that we had all stayed at Airbnb properties owned by hosts with connections to this underground world. These hosts had been secretly filming their guests and selling the footage to the highest bidder. The revelation sent chills down my spine. It wasn't just a personal vendetta, it was a sick, twisted business. The people behind this were exploiting the very platforms we trust for our privacy. I gathered all the evidence I could find and took it to the police, hoping they could put an end to this nightmare. As the investigation unfolded, more victims came forward. The Airbnb hosts involved were arrested, and the illegal operation was dismantled. It was a relief knowing that justice was served, but the scars of the invasion lingered. The experience changed me. I became hyper-aware of my surroundings, cautious of who I trusted. The violation of privacy I endured was a wake-up call, a reminder that the digital age has its dark corners, and sometimes the horrors we face are not supernatural, but all too real. It all started when me and my girlfriend Emma found this cute Airbnb online. It had great reviews and the pictures looked cozy. It seemed like a perfect spot for a little escape. We're not fancy travelers, just looking for something different, away from the usual routine. The location was a little odd in a small town we'd never heard of, but we figured we would spend most of the time just relaxing at home anyway, maybe wandering into town for an afternoon to see what it was all about. So we pull up to this cottage in the middle of nowhere, greeted by a friendly host named Mr. Reynolds. He seemed nice enough, showed us around, and the place had this rustic charm, vintage furniture, and a real homey feel. It's like we stepped into a time warp and we loved it. We get settled in and everything seems fine, until Mr. Reynolds casually mentions, "Oh, by the way, there's a locked room. It's just storage, nothing to worry about." Now, I'm not one to get nosy, but that room sparked my curiosity. The first day goes by and we spend most of the day enjoying the quaint little town nearby. But when we get back, there's this odd smell in the cottage, a mix of something damp and old like Grandma's attic. We laugh it off, trying to convince ourselves that it's just part of the charm. As we're settling in, I can't help but wonder about that locked room. Mr. Reynolds said it's just storage, but every time we pass by, it's like it's calling to me. Emma tells me to let it go, but you know how it is when something nags at you. Night falls, and that's when things start to take a turn. It's not the typical horror movie stuff, no creepy sounds or strange shadows. It's more like a feeling, like something sinister has happened in this place. I try to brush it off, but Emma's giving me those looks like she senses it too. Days pass, but the eerie feeling lingers and my curiosity about that locked room grows. I decide to take a peek, thinking maybe I can put my mind at ease. As I turn the doorknob, it's locked tight. I remember seeing a set of keys in the kitchen and feeling a bit rebellious. I tried them one by one until one finally opened the door. Inside, it's just a room, nothing unusual. Boxes, old furniture, and a weird-looking lamp. I'm thinking, okay, maybe it really is just storage, but then I notice a trapdoor on the floor. What could be under there? My heart's pounding as I lift it up. Beneath is a dark staircase leading down. I grab my phone for some light, and as I descend, I discover a hidden basement. It's freezing and the air feels thick. In the middle of the basement hangs a chain with handcuffs attached to it. There are cameras and various tools laying strewn around. It's like some sick torture chamber. Panic sets in and I rush back upstairs, closing and locking the door behind me. I debate telling Emma, but she's already on edge, and I don't want to make things worse. That night, though, I can't shake the feeling that something's not right. We hear strange noises like footsteps, but when I try to tell Mr. Reynolds about it, he dismisses it as the house settling. I try to believe him, but that basement discovery has me on edge. The next day, we decided to cut our trip short. We pack up, trying to act casual, not wanting to alert Mr. Reynolds that something's off. As we load our stuff into the car, I can't shake the feeling of being watched. Emma's got the same uneasy vibe, and we exchange glances that speak volumes. We've got this pit in our stomachs, a mix of fear and urgency to get the heck out of there. Just as we're about to drive away, Mr. Reynolds appears out of nowhere. He's got this strange smile, too wide to be genuine. "Leaving so soon?" he asks, his voice way too cheerful. I try to play it cool, saying something about needing to get back home early, but he just keeps staring like he knows I found the basement. Emma's looking at me, and we both know we need to get out of there. We speed away, the cottage disappearing in the rearview mirror. Hours pass, and we're miles away, the tension in the car finally lifting. Now that we've put some distance between us and the cabin, I decide to tell Emma about what I found. The basement, the cameras, the handcuffs. She freaks out, but we're far enough away at this point that she calms down relatively quickly. We reflect on the whole ordeal and try to make sense of the bizarre discoveries. Did we stumble upon something way darker than a simple Airbnb, or does it all have a logical explanation? One thing is for sure, I'm not going back to find out.